Yo, welcome to Physics with Vinay Uppal.
Hi, I'm Vinay Uppal and I'm back with season 2. This is the third episode of the prediction series. And in this episode, I'm going to be solving the question that I posed to you in the second episode. This is a question that had appeared in one of the MIT undergrad exams, but definitely very relevant to JEE. So let's just quickly read the question first. A small block of mass m lies above a thin disk of total mass capital M, constant surface density sigma, and radius r. A hole of radius r by 2 is cut into the center of the disk, allowing the mass to pass through. So here I have the small mass m, and I have a disk of mass capital M. So it's not actually very clear if the mass m, total mass capital M, refers to the entire disk before cutting the hole or after cutting the hole. So anyway, we'll try and give the answer in terms of the surface density. So we can avoid the mass capital M. Okay, so the mass starts at a position along the central axis of the disk, but is displaced at a height delta h from the plane of the disk. So this is the displacement of the small block, where delta h is much lesser than capital R. Okay, there are no other external forces at work on the system. That is, the disk and block are out in deep space. So there's no external force. That means the momentum of the system will be conserved. The center of mass of the system is not going to get displaced. Also important, assume that small m is much lesser than capital M. Alright. So what is the question asking? Part A is asking, show that to first order in delta H, the block undergoes simple harmonic motion with respect to the center plane of the disk, and compute the period of the oscillation of the block. And in the second part, what is the period of oscillation of the disk and what is the ratio of the amplitude of the disk oscillation to that of the block? So a lot of you had given the correct answer for part A, and some of you had done it correctly for part B as well in the comment section of the previous episode. I was pretty happy to see that. One thing is, you can see that the level of JEE Advanced is very much on the first year undergrad course level of American universities like MIT or Stanford, Harvard. If you compare the course structure and if you go to the website and look at their questions that come in their exams and assignments, you will see that most of them are on what you would say on the tougher side of JEE Advanced, and some of them are easy even by comparison to JEE Advanced. In my opinion, the undergrad education at IIT is far superior to anything offered in any of the American universities. So let's take a look at the solution. So for part A, we will require the gravitational field due to a disk. Now, if you have studied electrostatics, then this result should be familiar, that by a disk, the electric field is given by sigma by 2 epsilon naught into 1 minus cos alpha. Now this should be very familiar if you've done a basic study of electrostatics. Here alpha is the half angle subtended by the disk at any point on the axis of the disk, and sigma is the surface charge density. Now, in order to calculate the gravitational field due to a disk, we can just use the mathematical transformation to go from electric field to gravitational field. We already know that mathematically all we need to do is replace kq by gm as far as field is concerned, or even potential. So here k is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, and I can write q as sigma into area, where sigma is surface charge density, and that transforms into g times, and mass I can write it as mass density, surface density of mass into area. So it is as if I have sigma by epsilon naught getting replaced by 4 pi g times sigma. Sigma by epsilon naught will get replaced by 4 pi g sigma, and therefore my gravitational field will be, instead of sigma by 2 epsilon naught, I'll have 4 pi g sigma by 2. So I'll have 2 pi g sigma into 1 minus cos alpha. So this is the gravitational field of a disk. And then in terms of x and the radius, I can just write cos alpha as x divided by root of r square plus x square. And because they have said that x is much lesser than r in the question, so I can just ignore x squared compared to capital R square, and I'll have 2 pi g into 1 minus x by r up to first order. So this is the gravitational field due to a disk. Now if you want to calculate the gravitational field due to an annular ring, that is a portion of the disk has been removed. So the portion of the disk that has been removed has a radius of r by 2. And therefore I can simply write the field due to this annular ring is the field due to the entire disk of radius r minus the field due to a disk of radius r by 2. So I'll have 2 pi g sigma common. So 1 minus x by r is the field due to the disk and of radius r, and minus 1 minus x by r by 2. This is the field due to the disk of radius r by 2. And therefore the net field due to this annular ring becomes 2 pi g sigma by r into x. You can see it is proportional to x, and thereby the force on the block, which will be m into g, will also be proportional to x, and therefore this is SHM. And now it's quite straightforward. You have the constant between force and x. This is the constant, this is the SHM constant. And time period we know for a two-body SHM. So here the disk is also moving. So it is a two-body SHM. So in a two-body SHM, the time period is simply 2 pi root mu by k. Instead of m, you have mu, which is the reduced mass. Here 1 by mu would be 1 by small m plus 1 by capital M. Now I am assuming that this capital M is the mass of this annular ring. Now because they had said that the block is very light compared to the disk, I can simply neglect 1 by capital M, and therefore in the approximation I can simply say mu is approximately equal to m. Under this approximation I will have here mu by m, the factor of mu by m just becomes 1, and the k value is given by this equation, and I'll end up with the time period as root of 2 pi r by g sigma. So this was the official answer given by MIT as well. So congratulations, if you got this answer correct, you would have done well in that question in MIT. Now let's look at part B. Part B is very straightforward. They're asking us to calculate the ratio of the amplitude of the oscillation of the disk to the block. And also they had asked us the time period of the disk. Now because the center of mass will not get displaced because there's no external force, the time period of the disk and of the block has to be the same. The momentum is also conserved, and initially momentum is 0, so the momentum is 0 throughout the motion of the block and the disk, and therefore the block and the disk will reach their respective amplitudes at the same time. At the amplitude the velocity is 0, correct? So both the block and the disk are going to reach their respective amplitudes at the same instant, and therefore they will have the same time period. Coming to the ratio of the amplitudes, we'll use the fact that the center of mass of the system is at rest always, so the displacement is 0, and therefore I'll have m1a1 is equal to m2a2. Here that means that ma of the block should be equal to ma of the disk, which is where a is the amplitude. So very straightforward, the disk and the block amplitudes ka ratio is going to be the ratio of the respective masses, inverse ratio rather, small m by capital M. That's it for today. See you guys. Good night.